Leah Grover is a former phone sex operator. Leah Grover, former phone sex operator, now a mommy blogger and a self-described quote-unquote vigilante educator. She is also a member of the Crystal Lake District 47 School Board. Leah Grover. MAGA has no ideology whatsoever aside from worshiping the idol of their orange-faced God. No morality, no ethics. Not one iota of integrity in the entire lot. The only thing they have is hatred. They were okay with supporting a known rapist in 2016, and they're okay with him protecting his pedophile friends now. They never cared about children. They just cared about hurting trans people. They never cared about the law. They just cared about hurting immigrants. They never cared about history. They just cared about criminalizing blackness. They never cared about women. They just cared about punishing anyone who stepped out of line. The entire movement can be summed up as, quote, you think you learned something by reading and listening and caring? F you. Leah Grover, former phone sex operator, now Crystal Lake District 47 school board member, also had this to say. They have openly, MAGA, they have openly raged against education, against empathy, against logic and reason, against fairness, and especially against the notion that all people are created equal. To anyone who gets out of that cult, great, but you're going to have to reckon with yourself and how you could ever have been persuaded and how long you could bear to defend yourself before you left. To everyone left in the MAGA cult, you disgust me. Every week you manage to find more ways to disgust me. It's worse than a sickness. It's a condemnation of your very soul. I look forward to Leah Grover's contributions to the quality of education at the Crystal Lake High Schools, don't you? New Trier. New Trier has a new social studies teacher. Her name is Sarah Gerudis. She posts things on social media like, STFU, shut the blank up about Chicago, especially if you are a Fox News watcher and or don't live in the city. Thank you. And quoting, welcome to raising a family in the most exceptionally unexceptional country in the world. I look forward to Sarah Gerudis's contributions to the intellectual development of New Trier students as they matriculate through that wonderful institution and make their way onto college, armed with the version of American history that Sarah Gerudis offers. New Trier also has some sort of fostering dialogue in divisive times instructional that they have platformed. The presenter is a woman named Jasmine Wong. I guess this was a webinar. And she opened the webinar on fostering dialogue in divisive times with a land acknowledgement. Gosh, I wonder what perspective she is going to push. And then she said, among other things, I'm quoting, as I think about our identities and how they impact the kinds of moments where we stop, I also want to pause to say that we also need to be reflective that the choice to make space or time is also impacted by our own identities, what we choose as being important to see and pause at. And so we also want to be aware of the moments in which students are raising stories and having that power and that empowerment to raise moments to discuss in the classroom where they need to pause. I look forward to the contributions that Jasmine Wong will make to both the students and the teachers and administrators at New Trier as that school continues to pretend that is in the business of educating rich kids, which mainly is what it's mainly the point. And then those rich kids go on to other institutions of intellectual development and enlightenment and do what? Create no-go zones for Jews? Shout down conservative speakers, vandalize buildings. For more on all this, pleased to be joined by Ian Rowe, the founder of Vertex Partnership Academies, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, visiting fellow at the Woodson Center, and author of Agency, the 4-point plan for all children to overcome the victimhood narrative and discover their pathway to power. Ian, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Dan, thank you. That's a very sobering lead-in
Yeah,
today of
well,
what's happening in our
yeah,
schools.
exactly. Yeah, this is a very different conversation than I think we were going to have because of Charlie Kirk's assassination yesterday. But I don't think we can talk about what's happened on a college campus yesterday in the context of what's been happening on college campuses for a long time, and not
Sure.
include what's happening at the K through 12
Yes.
level, as you know very well, because you're a practitioner, not just a policy guy.
I've been thinking about this, and obviously, this terrible event that happened with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But for the moment, I want to not focus on the one killer who resolved his disagreement through violence. I want to actually focus on the more than 7,000 people who signed petitions to resolve their disagreements through silence. They signed petitions to disinvite Charlie Kirk because the very last thing that they could handle is actual civil discourse, actual debate around difference of opinions. And we have to realize that it's that attempt at silencing by those 7,000 petitioners that ultimately leads to this one deranged person who feels that the only solution is through violence and ultimate silencing. And there are just real implications for, I run high schools in the Bronx. There are real implications for what we need to be teaching our children to value viewpoint diversity, our common humanity, this idea of equality of opportunity, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of political affiliation. So a terrible event like yesterday doesn't just happen out of the blue. And we really need to think about, why is it that 7,000 people across University of Utah Valley University and Utah State would sign a petition saying, no, 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 no. It's more dangerous to hear ideas. We'd rather silence them.
Right. I mean, it seems to me that part of the problem is you don't, I guess, learn to respect differences of opinion, different views on different topics, and and address those in a sensible, peaceful way if you want to engage at all. If you have adults at the K through 12 level suggesting that, yeah, this viewpoint is dangerous and this person should be silenced. I mean, what's happening at K through 12 and college is as much the fault of the adults in those systems as it is the kids.
Of course.
And it seems to me, like, you correct me if I'm wrong in this. You know what it seems to me? It seems to me like they know it's sort of a Chesterton's, like when people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in anything.
Right.
When these kids don't know how to read and reason and do math, when they don't actually know anything, of course what fills that void is the politicization that they're being fed throughout their time in school.
Well, no, that's the narrative, of course, right? And it doesn't matter actually if you know your math or reading, because we live in an oppressive society, right? Based on your skin color, your religion, your gender, the system is rigged against you. So what does it matter? Right? What does it matter if you are applying yourself in each of these areas of math and reading and science? And we should talk about what's happening there, because that's a pretty sad story too. But you're right. It is this overarching narrative that America itself is an oppressive nation. And the things that you just described by these teachers, the school board members, it's, we don't know for sure. It's the first time I heard it, but it's highly likely they're putting forth a narrative that suggests that our kids are going to be facing insurmountable barriers, structural barriers. And all these things, all they tend to do is to dehumanize one another. right? Because it's no longer that we can just disagree on the merits of an argument. No, no, no. If you hold a certain set of viewpoints, you are an evil person, not worthy of dignity. In fact, the first step to disavowing one's humanity is to disavow even their ability to speak or to present an argument. That's why you see these schools and adults, and you're right, it's not the kids, it's the adults shutting down discussion even before kids have had an opportunity to understand the merits on all sides of a given issue. And that's why this terrible incident, obviously this one person who took this heinous act, hopefully he'll be caught to, held accountable soon. But the teachable moment is 7,000 people that wanted to shut the conversation down at all.
Yeah.
We can never let that happen. Charlie Kirk actually is famous for saying that the reason he, goes into these environments that are hostile, he said, what is so important to our country is to find our disagreements respectfully, because when people stop talking, that's when violence happens.
The piece by Roland Fryer, which I'm sure you saw in the Journal earlier this week, talking about education reform. And I mean, it's not dissimilar, frankly. And when I read it, I was thinking of your 4-point plan in your book Agency. Yes. It's not dissimilar, but I mean, it's the Harvard economist, if people don't remember the conversation we had about it. Roland Fryer is very good. But it's also, to read that piece is to pull your hair out. You say, like, Roland Fryer had this success story in Houston more than a decade ago, and it got abandoned, and nobody else apparently wanted to adopt it. And I know there are these green shoots, like your charter schools in the Bronx, and I can name schools in Chicago too. But in terms of systemically, well, we just saw the test scores. So systemically, this is a catastrophe, and and it's not because we don't know what to do to address it. It's because there's just no political will in not just big cities, but in a lot of suburban communities to implement the things that would produce the results that we say we all want.
Yeah, I mean, this is what is so maddening. I mean, as you just said, the National Assessment for Educational Progress, the nation's report card, has been coming out over the last few weeks, and it found that in 2024, there were 4 levels at the national assessment. There's reading at the advanced proficiency level, proficiency, basic, and then below basic. Below basic means that you don't have the ability to understand common words or to form paragraphs, right? Basic ideas. At 4th grade, there are now more kids at below basic than there are at 4th graders that are at proficiency or above. Think about that. 40% of all 4th graders in our country are below basic, which exceeds the kids that are reading at or above proficiency levels. And also at 12th grade. So, you think, okay, well, maybe things get better over time. But the 12th grade data just came out. In 2024, 12th graders are now reading at the lowest levels in the history of the exam since 1992, as the first year that came out in reading. And in math, it came out in 2005, that assessment. 2024, the lowest assessment of 12th graders, of seniors, graduating seniors. So we have to, I mean, there are a whole bunch of, we could do a whole call just on what are the reasons that our schools have been failing for so long. But in the interim, what do we do with all those families that are trapped in school systems? And that, when we originally had this discussion to have me on, we were going to talk about this provision, this school choice provision that's now been created that actually can create an escape valve for parents that all they want is a shot at a good education for their kids. So I'm happy to talk about that if you want to pivot, but all of these things are connected. All of these things are connected.
Well, I mean, yeah, because the key with this provision that was advanced in the big, beautiful bill by the Trump administration and now codified is that states have to opt in. And so,
Yes.
and you already have most of the country, 60% of the country that have school choice programs in one form or the other. States like Illinois did, and now we don't. But this is an opportunity where school choice is not available to put pressure on your political representatives to make it available through the federal government. And so it has particular saliency here.
Yeah, so just for your listeners, so as you said, in the bill that was passed on July 4th, tucked in is this provision, which is the first ever federal tax credit that could support a national school choice program. And the key is all funded through philanthropy. This is not tax dollars. So here's how it works. Starting in 2027, any American will be able to donate up to $1,700 to what's called a scholarship granting organization. These are nonprofits that take donations and then in turn pool those donations together and then redistribute them in the form of scholarships, primarily to low-income kids, to pay for things like SAT prep or high-impact tutoring, even if you're in a public school, or you'd go to tuition at a private school. But the idea is that those dollars, those scholarships, are given to families to make a choice as to what they think is best for their kid. And as you said, one of the provisions that the Senate parliamentarians said when the bill was passed, we can't coerce every state to participate in this tax credit program, because if you donate up to $1,700, you get a dollar for dollar tax credit. So it's a win-win-win, right? And so every governor has to opt in. Well, guess what? Every Republican governor has signaled that they're going to opt in, because why not? This is literally potentially tens of millions of dollars that could be created in your state that could then be given out in scholarships. And yet almost no Democratic governor at this point has signaled that they are going to opt in. And in fact, the biggest loudspeakers, Randy Weingarten, the head of the National Teachers Union, folks like Diane Ravitch, they are actively pushing these governors to say, no, do not opt your state into this federal tax credit, literally depriving kids in their state of a philanthropically funded opportunity. This is the madness that we have to counter. You know, it used to be that even if you had a divide on environmental issues or healthcare or whatever, there was a sort of an agreement that when it came to school choice, we can all agree that all kids, but especially low-income kids, should have the power to choose a great educational pathway for their kid. But now we seem to be at this impasse, and I'm trying very much to encourage Democratic governors in particular to say yes to this provision.
Ian Rowe, founder of Vertex Partnership Academy, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, visiting fellow at the Woodson Center, and author of Agency, the 4-point plan for all children to overcome the victimhood narrative and discover their pathway to power. Ian, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
And Ian Rowe joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
At almostfreeteeth.com, they're dedicated to making smiles great again. If you have medical PPO insurance, find out how you could save 90% off on average to get a beautiful dental implant supported smile. Check if you qualify right now at almostfreeteeth.com.
You know what really keeps me up at night? It's the criminals feel more and more bold. They have no fear of any consequences because there are none. So I did what anyone with a family should do. I called Goldilocks. They're not just some cookie-cutter security company. Goldilocks has been protecting Chicagoland homes and businesses for 4 decades, 40 years. And they actually listen. Their technician comes out to the house. He takes a look at what you need to make your house a smart home with a security system you can monitor from anywhere. It's built specifically for me and my family. Motion sensors,